Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo was a series that had just one season of 16 episodes from late 1979 and just barely breaking into the 80s. There is another series with the exact same name, which definitely isn't confusing at all, but they're technically considered separate, so I'm only going to be looking at these 16 episodes in this one. How have they held up after all these years? Well, in the series premiere, the superhero Blue Scarab breaks into the person who created him's house, threatening him to never make a comic again, or face the consequences. This news is so big that it even makes the paper, as the gang reads about it at the ice cream parlor. Once the gang go to Jerry Sloan's, no, not the legendary basketball coach, they find the mark of the scarab on the wall. Also, Scrappy calls Scooby Uncure, which is like 40 years ahead of its time. As Jerry shows Shaggy and the Doos how he makes his comics, the blue scarab returns and threatens him again, saying he'll turn to a life of crime now. If only there was some quote about living long enough to become the villain. Shaggy uses the next issue of the comic to determine that Blue Scarab will be going to the jewelry store. And, wouldn't you know, he's exactly right. As he kicks down the door, he somehow knocks out the guard, and steals some of the precious jewels. Using the comic, and hearing it over the radio, the crime spree doesn't stop there, as Blue Scarab robs the bank before heading over to the museum. As the gang arrive, they tell Scrappy to stay put, since he's just a puppy after all. But little do they know, Blue Scarab hates him just like the average millennial, and tries to squish him with a gargoyle. Luckily, or unluckily, depending on how you feel, Uncle Scooby is there to save him. But unfortunately, Blue Scarab gets out with the ruby crown. The last chance to catch Blue Scarab will be at the printing press, which they surprisingly do, only after Shaggy, Scrappy, and Scooby get sent down the conveyor belt. They eventually unmask Blue Scarab to be Howard Kruger, Jerry Sloan's assistant, who was tired of not getting the credit he thought he deserved. For the series premiere, this one was kind of a banger, honestly. I was super impressed with the background paintings, and Blue Scarab's voice effects were pretty good. Plus, Scrappy isn't a total nuisance yet, but let's see if that'll change here. The gang decide to stop at Wonderworld, a robot-powered mystery-themed amusement park, so Velma can live out her fantasy of solving a crime with Sherlock Holmes. Once they arrive at 221B Baker Street, they learn of the crime spree of the Night Ghoul of London, who has stolen some rare jewels. As Scooby and Shaggy check the area out, they find the guard tied up and locked away, which can only mean one thing, as the Night Ghoul drops down behind them and chases them about the castle, before eventually falling over and into the water below. Luckily, it was just one of the robots, who aren't of any real danger to our meddling kids. Velma solves her mystery in record time, finding the rare jewels underneath the case. But a wrench gets thrown into our plan, as the real Night Ghoul pops out from behind this tapestry, throwing it on everyone so he can take the jewels for real this time. Scrappy puts up the best fight among our heroes, but it's quickly put into the second glass case. Shaggy, Scooby, and Scrappy give chase, as the Night Ghoul throws various things at them, eventually dropping a chandelier on them. As the gang peruse around robotic London, it's only natural that Shaggy, Scooby, and Scrappy run into the Night Ghoul once more. But this one's also a short-circuited robot. Mr. Marino apologizes for the inconvenience, and offers the gang a full refund if they want to leave. But Velma won't let herself leave without solving this mystery. And so they set out, with Shaggy and Scooby accidentally splitting up from Scrappy, where they find the crown jewels, and the real Night Ghoul. In a pretty epic battle inside the Tower of Big Ben, they end up winding it back 2 hours, allowing it to ring once more, which causes Sherlock to short-circuit, and gives Velma her final idea. But Shaggy and the Doos already have everything wrapped up, and the Night Ghoul is unveiled to be Mr. Marino, the owner of the park, who nearly got away with it all. I had a lot of fun with this episode, but I always love a nice Sherlock case. It reminds me a lot of the What's New Scooby-Doo Robot Wonderland, which is always nice. I think it's going to wind up above the first episode, for now. Shaggy, Scooby, and Scrappy are going for a hike, when a dangerous police chase passes by, which ends in the crook getting abducted back into their ship. Sufficiently scared, both the cop and our terrified trekkers run off, the latter of which back to the motel where Fred and the girls are. But of course, they go straight back to the scene, where they find glowing handprints all over the abandoned car, and eventually the alien. And I don't know how else to describe this, but they just kinda look like CeeLo Green. Back at the station, we find out that the alien stole over $1 billion worth of radioactive metals. And you know what? I respect the hustle, honestly. But realistically, there's no way they fit everything inside the sedan and got away clean. Mr. Moss returns to see the commotion, but quickly runs off, being replaced by Tessie, who's just passing through, investigating the motel with her Geiger counter. Unfortunately for her, she gets abducted too, along with her mule. When they make it back to the motel, Mr. Moss is gone too. which gives Shaggy and Scooby a great excuse to pack up and leave before they're abducted too. Scrappy isn't as keen, finding this device and doing the only natural thing, pressing the big button. But it just turns on the television, which does give Velma her final clue that she needs. And the gang set up the trap, with our usual suspects as bait. The alien ship lands, and Scrappy runs in without a shred of worry, leaving Shaggy and Scooby no other choice but to run in after him. But before they can leave, the door shuts, trapping them in the saucer. But they were never in any real danger, as the saucer was really just connected to a crane at the construction site, with Tessie controlling everything. The premise of this episode was the best one yet, but the execution of it left a lot to be desired. Tessie's one of the greatest thieves in the Scoobyverse, and this is how she goes out? Sad. Unfortunately, this one's going third place out of 3. The Neon Phantom of the Roller Disco is without a doubt the most 70s title they could have come up with. The gang are in Hollywood and decide to stop for a concert, which is unfortunately interrupted by this bozo in a neon skin suit. And look at the lips on him, Jesus. Instead of going to their movie premiere as intended, they instead decide to go to the roller disco, where they heard the Phantom resides. Unfortunately, it's locked up for the night, and trying to break in naturally sounds the alarm, alerting the neighbor. But once he's gone, Scrappy finds a way in. They aren't alone though, as one of the producers of the show is up late creating a new light show, and his partner Steve Shimmer is there too. While Shaggy, Scooby, and Scrappy head over to the Chinese theater, Fred and the girls hang back to watch the Sparkles record a new song, and watch as the Neon Phantom attacks. But they're not hanging around for long, as they need even more power, so they head on over to the theater and interrupt Shaggy and the Doo's good time. But before Scrappy can put a real hurt on them, they decide to part ways, running in opposite directions. Back at the disco, the gang find their next clue, a catalog for light dimmers, with something written on the back.
Humo puns eel?
Okay, I'm sorry to break immersion here, but Fred is never beating the himbo allegations. This is clearly an address. At least Velma gets it, and they set up the grand reopening for the disco. And how nice of them to give the Neon Phantom an invite, but they can't stay for long, as they run straight for the hills. Scooby bravely launches himself up the sign, capturing the Neon Phantom, who of course we all know to be Steve Shimmer. You know, I never really trusted that guy anyways. Anyone in a shiny suit like that? Oh, it's not him? It's the guy from next door to Sparkles that we saw for like 2 seconds? Okay. While the end here kinda comes out of nowhere, and we never really got a solid chase in the episode, it's still kinda fun. But definitely the worst of the 4 so far. It's just a bit boring, the villain design doesn't do it for me, and the reveal isn't overly satisfying. The gang are taking a cruise through the beautiful Florida Keys, and decide to stop in Haiti for a bit, and they really missed an opportunity to hit the zombie aspect of the culture. But I suppose a demon snake is fine too, as they catch wind of the legend from some fellow travelers. In the cold open, we already saw its first attack on the guard. Also, the snake has arms and legs, we just gotta deal with that. Daphne stops at a local market for a souvenir. She's just like me for real. But that just so happens to be an idol for the snake demon, and unfortunately it's cursed. And even worse, the snake demon interrupts midnight snack o'clock, as Shaggy and Scooby board up. No worries though, as Scrappy brings the fight to them, and eventually up onto the deck. It looks like the snake demon's just after Daphne's statue, so just give it to them and you're in the clear. Until Scrappy puts his foot down, and ends up dropping it 20,000 leagues under the sea. Now back in Miami, I suppose they could still go for the zombie aspect, just with completely different lore behind it. The captain and his first mate part, with the captain picking up some supplies, so maybe it's the bath salts we need for the zombie. Either way, the gang don't even walk the city block before the giant reptile tries to attack them, so this is pretty authentically Florida. After a totally relaxing shore leave, they set sail once more, and Shaggy finds out he's on Snake Watch, since he has the lucky key. Yoink. Yeah, some luck. Stuck in the Keys without a key, the only thing they can do is sleep through the night, as they go up through the Gulf and reach New Orleans. But once they do, Velma seems to have cracked this mystery, impersonating a police officer to divert the float this clown drives. But as anyone who loses a best friend knows, this clown turns into a snake. But if they're attacking Shaggy and Scooby, no one's driving this float, and they crash out, revealing tons of stolen silver ingots that they smuggled in from Haiti. After Velma explains everything that led her to this point, she unmasks the snake clown to be the first mate to Farge. And I'll be the first to admit, they got me. I thought it was 100% Miss Audrey. She was fishy from the jump, but I suppose all red herrings are. I genuinely love this episode. They go to some of my favorite places in the US, and the part with Haiti is super fun. And the snake, while not anatomically correct, still has a great design and a great spree of crimes. This one's going all the way to the top, and I'm not sure if it can get knocked off, but we'll see. When driving through some back roads, the gang encounter the Sky Skeleton, a biplane with a giant skeleton painted on it, which, I gotta admit, is pretty badass. And it looks like the gang agree, as they go down to the airfield to check it out, instead being greeted with the skeleton's message. And Amelia Palmer, the second greatest pilot named Amelia after... Wait. The best pilot named Amelia left. Scrappy finds Ed Drake snooping around, and he's incredibly suspicious, and really just kinda ruining the vibe. So he heads out quickly. Eventually they find Daphne's friend Wendy, who's getting ready for the competition tomorrow. Wendy hangs back while the gang investigates, which is a good idea, as they run into Amelia again, who definitely doesn't like Wendy. But it could be worse. They could be Shaggy and the Doos, who run into Phoebe Bridgers. I mean, the skeleton. Who swings down and grabs Scrappy with his feet, and throws him down onto a propeller, essentially jump-starting the plane. Scrappy's wild ride leaves him crashing into a stack of parachutes, giving the skeleton enough time to enter the tunnel Shaggy and Scooby hid in. But just before they get snatched up by them, Scrappy flips the switch on the machine, which turns out to be a wind tunnel, sending Shaggy and Scooby for a tumble. It was a good idea, in theory, but when Shaggy weighs like 120 soaking wet, and Scooby is the dog, they get flown about like a plastic bag in the wind. They land on a suspended engine, and fall right through the floor into the mine below. While they do some off-camera mining, Fred and the girls get attacked by the Sky Skeleton, and follow them to a hidden airstrip, where they find a skeleton piloting it. What were they expecting to find? Something they didn't expect to find, and honestly neither was I, was that the plane was controlled via this computer, with different flight pattern cards to plug into it. As they head back, the skeleton is right behind them, and their walk cycle looks vaguely gritty-like. When Shaggy and Scooby hide on top of a pole, the skeleton graciously knocks them down and catches them, sending them on a flight almost as dangerous as the average Boeing flight. Oh, maybe just on par actually, as the wing and tail shred off, and they land in a puddle. Back at the airfield, the skeleton is unmasked as Ed Drake, who was illegally mining the oil underneath the airfield. This episode felt very disjointed to me. It was just very point to point. Introduce character, character leaves, rinse and repeat. It would have been way more interesting if the culprit was Wendy, to stop Amelia from winning any more titles. But what do I know? Close to the bottom for sure. We're gonna head on over to Japan for our next episode. And what better way to bridge the gap between American and Japanese society than our shared love for baseball? But just as the Americans are about to close out the series, a giant dragon beast appears on the field, scaring everyone in the stadium out. Good news for the gang though, as they land in Tokyo just in time to catch the crook in the game all at once. But like any American influencer in Japan, they immediately start harassing people and making a mockery of the culture.
Sashimi! Like that must be Japanese for hot dogs!
As the gang begin their investigation, Fred and the girls find the stadium owner in his office, learning of the giant diamond trophies kept since the international series started, since Japan has never lost. Meanwhile, Scooby gets into a little baseball brawl with the dragon, eventually getting thrown into the whirlpool. Scrappy's not much help, but he's just a puppy after all. Somehow they wind up on the field, right as the dragon takes the mound for the first pitch, who makes vague threats towards the gang before disappearing once more. Shaggy just happens to run into Japan's best player, Ken Sumido, or he used to be, before he got kicked off the team by Mr. Husai. But it's probably nothing, so they grab a taxi back to the hotel. But not before the dragon swings down from the top of the stadium onto their ride. Yo, that was cool. While Shaggy and Scooby try to get some shut-eye, the dragon beast knocks out the window. And this might be a top 5 gag in any of the Scooby media.
That's for you.
Okay, Scoob. Like, thanks.
The gang chase them to the old fireworks factory, but it turns out to be kind of a bunch of nothing. I guess that's what makes Velma a bit smarter than I, as she hatches her grand plan to solve this case. Too late, as the dragon beast starts taking some batting practice. Without a bat though. If only someone thought of a video like this. Daphne and Fred capture the beast with a backstop net, and unmask Mr. Husai, who wanted to stop the American team from getting the trophy, where they would likely find out that the diamond was replaced. Doesn't matter though. We never get to see who wins. So I'm choosing to believe that Japan came back to win the series. And now this is canon. We get thrown right into the mix for our next scare with this devil bear, as they rudely interrupt our women in STEM moment, scaring her off as she narrowly avoids the iron claw. Not to fear, as the gang just happened to be touring the Grand Canyon. Also, this park ranger actually has the first recorded BBL in history, so love that for them. The gang meet all of the archaeology team, which includes discount versions of Dolly Parton, George Lucas, and Freddie Mercury. Shaggy and Scooby stop for a quick sandwich break, but after fumbling it, Scooby instead finds the devil bear, and Scrappy causes a cave-in to try and find them, to no avail. But they do find a cave full of old junk this fireman is hoarding. Oh, sorry, not hoarding, antique selling. And business looks booming. Eventually, they get kicked out and turn in for the night. Well, except for Scrappy, who gets up into the devil bear's grill, getting dragged away before he's decimated. The dudes ditch Shaggy to go toe-to-toe with the bear, but just as he's about to become bear bait, the devil bear suddenly vanishes down this ladder. The next day, Scooby tries to help his nephew learn to fish, even though he's doing pretty well for himself, instead having another run-in with the devil bear, eventually finding that the stalagmites aren't naturally generated. The gang split up, with Velma finding the hidden tape recorder, and Shaggy finds the Grand Canyon branch of the US Mint. The only guard on duty is the devil bear, but like any easily swayed by money influencer, gets caught up in this rug pull scandal, and is soon unmasked as the archaeologist Chuck Hunt, who was going to take the treasure he found in the caves. This episode pretty much goes beat for beat with what I picture to be a classic Scooby episode formula to be. And that's fine enough, if even a little dull at times, given we've seen this play out so many times already. It's a pretty mid-tier episode. Not bad, not groundbreaking. In 20,000 Screams Under the Sea, we start with a cold open that kind of evokes the opening terror of Jaws, until you see that the creature kinda looks like John Waters. The attack even makes the local papers, which Velma reads to the rest of the gang. And they get to meet the man of the hour, this Vincent Price knockoff that we saw in the open. Just as the big cliff diving competition begins, they encounter the other half of that exchange, seeing the sea monster down below. Senor Valdez takes Fred and the girls to relive the night he was attacked, as Shaggy finds the natural pearl necklace that the clams make. But before they find the hole in that logic, the sea monster arrives and begins the chase. Though they try a classic bit to buy some time, Scrappy inevitably gets snatched, and Scooby has to save his little nephew. He's just a puppy after all, just in time for their aqua uber, and they soon wash up back on the cliff. The gang take the pearl necklace to a jeweler in the middle of the night. And if he's dressed like this, you know he was comically snoring, fully honk-shooing and me-me-meing. They learn that the necklace is an old relic of Spanish royalty, and head back out to sea for the scuba excursion. Just as they dive down, the monster comes up for air, hopping up into the boat. They puncture a hole in the boat, leaving Shaggy and the dogs to fend for themselves on the open water, which goes about as well as you'd expect. Luckily, Senor Valdez was nearby, and delivered them to shore, and as they run to find Harbor Patrol, the sea monster chases them down. They use the boat and the parasail to try and escape, but the sea monster hops up and goes for a spin, eventually getting caught up on these yachts. Taking the mask off the sea monster, they find Tiger Morris, the renowned diver, who tried to keep everyone else from finding the treasure. Again, this reveal comes as no real shock, as all of the clues were there, and there's no way Senor Valdez would do this. He's too much of a sweetie. Overall, this one is slightly better than the last one, so at least we're going in the right direction. The gang take a trip out to San Francisco, visiting the legendary Alcatraz prison, just without any incarcerated inhabitants. But that might not be fully true, as the Lady Vampire of the Bay may roam the grounds. But that's just a myth. Oh, hey Daphne, nice haircut. But before Shaggy and the dogs turn into a vampire vol au vent, they run off and catch up with the rest of the tour. Back on the mainland, Daphne's still not feeling so good, so she retires for the night, leaving the rest of the gang to try and vanquish this vampire. But Scrappy soon gets rolled up into this rug, as the vampire flies out the window. As the boys are enjoying a fresh, garlicky pizza, they see who they believe to be Daphne roaming the streets, and go to catch up with her. But, of course, it's the Lady Vampire, who's kinda serving, honestly. She captures Scrappy in this box before going on a terror spree of Chinatown, stealing a rare jewel from the sign. Velma deduces the next target of the vampire, and they head over to the old opera house. And she's nailed it again. The vampire becomes the blueprint for Sia's dreams, jumping to the chandelier to steal the final of the lost jewels. Scrappy's been playing around as a set designer, and uses this experience to get a promotion to a trapper, and the vampire is captured. But Scrappy also tries to become an electrician, allowing the vampire to escape. And all of the tourists start flooding out of the woodworks to investigate, but it's too late to throw Velma off her trail, as she unmasks and then removes the makeup from the older lady, revealing Lefty Callahan, retrieving her stolen jewels. I really enjoyed this episode, having it seem like Daphne might be in on this one, even though we know she would never, is a really fun twist. Also, the double unmasking in a way was everything. It's going towards the top, maybe even number one. After a laser light show at the observatory, the security guard sneaks into the main area with a telescope, accidentally spawning in Regice on Ozempic, who quickly chases him away, and chases everyone else away apparently, as the gang are coming up the mountain as others evacuate. This top-down angle is completely unnecessary, but is super cool because it reminds me of like the first Grand Theft Auto game. The gang limp the mystery machine with a flat tire up to the conservatory, where they meet up with the astronomer, who's packing up to leave too. The gang sneak in, but quickly get caught by the observatory owner, and are told to leave. Shaggy and the dogs try to change the tire, instead getting captured by the star creature. Shaggy hits them with the first recorded, excuse me, in history, and then puts them in the maid outfit, sending them on the path to starting up their OnlyFans page. Scrappy breaks into Star Laboratories, as Scooby and Shaggy run in after him, instead having a run-in with the star creature, who takes off running up towards the conservatory. After getting blinded by the light show, they try and track the star creature back down, only finding a piece of their costume, which gives Velma the last bit of the puzzle she needs to solve this. Before she can, the star creature returns one last time, hitching a ride on the telescope before their eventual capture, revealing Mr. Greenfield himself. He was spying on the laboratory and leaking all their info, but left just enough breadcrumbs for Velma to thwart his efforts. The concept behind this episode was cool, and the monster design isn't half bad, even if it's pretty inconsistent throughout. Definitely not the best, but still a decent one. We start this next episode in the middle of a horror awards show, and immediately this one's looking towards the top. Look at all these monsters and creatures, how fun. But just as they premiere the newest horror movie, this simultaneously hairy yet balding creature swings down, scaring the crowd out. As all of the cosplayers run out, the gang are just pulling up, and immediately hop on the case. Shaggy and the dogs get into a spat with this Dracula imposter, as Fred and the girls deal with the real shadow creature. Before they can get a mid-investigation snack, Shaggy, Scooby, and Scrappy find the shadow creature, and suddenly they aren't so hungry anymore. Throughout this episode, the gang have encountered a couple fake monsters, like the Wolfman and the Bride of Frankenstein, but surely they aren't a core part of the story. The gang find a piece of missing film strip, showing the Baddie Awards host in the movie. Also, any British viewers out there, stop laughing. Now with the shadow creature captured, Velma starts her spiel of how she solved this one. And I think I can point out that she sounds super off in this episode. Like her voice actor had a cold or something. It's been super distracting. But under the mask is of course Brandon Davies, who was caught on film robbing the stamp store of their prized possessions. Okay, so I might have said this episode was towards the top because of the monsters, but genuinely nothing happened the entire time. I was super disappointed. It's not dead last, but it's pretty close. So this episode's title is Rocky Mountain Yee? I have no idea which one to go with, so you're getting all of them. Rocky Mountain Yee? Rocky Mountain Yee. Rocky Mountain Yeah! Rocky Mountain Yeah. Alright, great start. Let's see what it's about. A couple of skiers take to the Rocky Mountains, when they encounter the ghost of Jeremiah Pratt, who scares them down the mountain. Before the gang can even check into their lodge, they get told to leave for their own safety. Once they put their luggage away, it's straight to crime solving. But so far it's Mountain Man 1, the gang 0, as he stomps on the roof, causing them to get snowed in. Shaggy and Scooby aren't going to let some ghost ruin their ski trip, but what will ruin it is accidentally not going down the bunny slope, hitting the double black diamond super danger slope instead. Eventually, they run into Jeremiah Pratt on the slopes, and turn into a giant snowball and pick him up. And this reference might go over like 99% of you, but there was a Jackass PS2 game that had a level exactly like this, and it ruled. Pratt chases Shaggy and the dogs into the cave, but just as soon as they give him the slip, the rest of the gang head back where they just came from. Good timing for them, bad for the boys, as the ghost goes back to the cabin and scares them up the ski lift. But before they reach their stop, Jeremiah shakes them off and into the snow below. After Jeremiah joins them in the sauna, thankfully fully clothed, Velma gets her final plan, and of course Shaggy and Scooby are made to be the bait. But just before Jeremiah is captured, Scrappy attacks him and knocks him out of the way. But a real avalanche rolls through and somehow doesn't hurt anyone, just catches Jeremiah Pratt. Or should I say, Will Henry Pratt, his great-great-grandson, who was looking for his treasure. It's another fine episode, fairly straightforward like most of these. Nothing here puts it too high up, nothing drops it too far down. The mystery gang head out to Atlantic City, which is basically like the East Coast version of Las Vegas, which is basically just Biloxi, Mississippi, in the middle of the desert. Scooby and Shaggy get brought up on stage to help a magician during his show, when the ghost of his mentor interrupts the whole thing. Now with the show cancelled, they can return the pearl to its safe place. Too bad it's been stolen, so of course it's time to start investigating. Shaggy and Scooby start at the taffy stand, which shows how far ahead they think. as they run into the wizard ghost. A couple more magic gags later, and a couple more quick chases later, they eventually lose the ghost. In trying to avoid the ghost, they head on up to the production booth, where Scooby hits a button to reveal the ghost. That means the ghost has been nothing but a projection, and now they can finally capture him. Scrappy once again ruins the original plan, but luckily Shaggy and Scooby are kings of improv, and eventually they capture the ghost magician. But the pearl was a fake. It always had been. And the only one who would have been able to switch it was Morgan the magician. He switched the pearl and nearly got away with it, if it weren't for these meddling kids. Overall, it's a fine episode, but pretty forgettable in the grand scheme. So it's going somewhere in the middle. The penultimate episode begins with a town of people fleeing just before the sun goes down, and the Minotaur comes out of their enclosure. And oh my god, look how this mule turns slowly around. This had me dying while I was watching. The gang arrive on the island of Halo soon after, and after seeing the Minotaur tourist attraction, get abandoned by their boat captain. The start of the investigation leads us to one of the finest jokes in the series.
Who's there?
Scooby.
Scooby who?
Scooby-Doo.
They meet Nick Pappas, who tells the gang of the Minotaur's temple, which is the perfect place to start looking for some clues. Also, Nick is probably the coolest dressed person in this series. Look at him. They find the Minotaur's throne, but they don't take kindly to people stealing their silver coin, so they attack Shaggy and Scooby. Scrappy sets up a patent-pending Scrappy trap, but Petros just can't catch a break, as he loses his sack of olives for a second time. Back at the taverna, Shaggy covers the bill for everyone, but the Minotaur insists his money is no good here, and chases them out. Shaggy and the Doo sit on the boat with the olive shipments, when the Minotaur attacks them one last time. But everyone knows bulls can't stand the color red, and Scooby hits a quick "Olé!" and the Minotaur is waterlogged. It's revealed that the Minotaur is... Nick Pappas? No! It can't be! I knew his fashion sense was too immaculate to be a red herring. He was stealing treasures and keeping them in the olive barrels to send out to England, and he would have been in the clear if he didn't lose a piece of his belt. I enjoyed this one a lot more than some of the recent episodes. It had a fun plot with some good mythology lore, which will always give it a boost overall. Up near the top of the list for sure. And here we are, the series finale. We've seen the gang travel to some of the most beautiful places in the world. So what better place to end it than the concrete jungle of New York City? Which is apparently Scrappy's old stomping ground. So that's fun. We meet some of Scrappy's friends, and they're just about what you'd expect. These two goons are eavesdropping on their conversation, and it seems like they're in the market for a new dog. And all they had to do was wait for Scooby to be distracted as he walks right into their van, and they peel out. Shaggy hops in to save his buddy, but he winds up locked in the building the villains took them to. Meanwhile, Scrappy and these goofballs make their way through the city to try and find them, using the classic trenchcoat method to try and get through the subway turnstiles. Somehow, they wind up at the exact right address, and break in to try and break them out. Just as they find their escape, they fall right back into the back of the truck, and get driven down to the docks, where they're loaded onto a ship. Scrappy and the gang hitch a ride over, and meet back up with our kidnapped kings. Shaggy and Scooby are competent enough in this one to escape a few times, only for Scrappy and his buddies to knock them back to square one, and by the time they finally break out, they wind up capturing the crooks. I absolutely did not like this one. Daphne, Fred, and Velma are completely absent. Scrappy and his buddies only serve as comic relief to mess up the progress, and it's just not that fun. But at least this is the last time we'll follow this formula. Surely the next couple of series don't completely run with this idea. Bottom of the list. And seemingly just as quick as it was started, the series ends there. But of course, like I said at the start, they basically relaunched it the following year with a bit of a new format. But before I get into that, let's go through the episodes worst to best. And the unfortunate honor of the worst episode, in my opinion, goes to... yeah, it's no shock, it's the Ransom of Scooby Chief. Followed by the Neon Phantom of the Roller Disco, the Ghoul, the Bat, and the Ugly, the Scary Sky Skeleton, the Hairy Scare of the Devil Bear, 20,000 Screams Under the Sea, Strange Encounters of a Scooby Kind, the Demon of the Dugout, the Scarab Lives, Rocky Mountain Yee, the Sorcerer is a Menace, When You Wish Upon a Star Creature, the Night Ghoul of Wonderworld, Lock the Door, It's a Minotaur, Shiver and Shake, That's a Demon Snake, and the best episode in my opinion, I Left My Neck in San Francisco. Overall, this is pretty much what you'd expect with one of these Scooby series, but it is pretty forgettable in the grand Scooby scheme. But it might be the best of the Scrappy inclusions, so it's got that, I guess. Of course, a big shout out to the patrons. I appreciate your generous support so much. If you want to catch these videos a couple weeks early and get your name on the credits, head on over there with the link below or the card above. But you never have to give me money or anything like that for me to appreciate your support. Just you watching is more than enough. Everything else is just a bonus. I'll see y'all for the new and improved edition of Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo soon, but until then, bye!